We're gonna go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of a series of presentations, webinars that Rapid wants to deliver that hopefully will help you during this time of making sure your business survives and thrives through COVID. This particular webinar is all about controlling your inventory. And so talking about some of the tools and capabilities that Counterpoint has that allows you to control your inventory. And we'll be introducing some inventory concepts that may be very, very familiar to some of you. And for some of you, they may not be things that you already know. I did notice that there were a few people registered for this webinar who are not tracking inventory in Counterpoint and not tracking their purchase orders. And some of this may be less relevant for you all, but could be a curious learnings anyhow. So I encourage you to stick with us. Unfortunately, because of the number of people participating, we're not able to take questions during the webinar, but I encourage you to email rapidcares@rapidpos.com, and someone will be watching for your questions to come through on those, and we'll get those addressed. So without further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Bart McCleskey. I'm the president of Rapid, and presenting with me today is...
Hello, everybody. This is Sean Novak. I'm your virtual CIO at Rapid.
Thanks, Sean. So we have a pretty full agenda today, and Sean and I are going to be moving hopefully at a pretty rapid clip. We want to talk about stockouts and how do you identify stockouts when they occur so that you can get that fixed. And I think it's important to recognize that sometimes that we're talking about strategic stockouts. In other words, we're out of stock of stuff that we think we're going to be selling versus out of stock of something we haven't carried for 3 years. That takes a little extra work to get to that, right? We'll also talk about overstock. So we've got too much inventory. That certainly is a possibility in certain categories that we have. We'll talk about understock as well. So we're not completely out of stock, but it looks like we're getting low on stock. We'll show you how to identify those things. We'll talk just briefly, a quick flyby on auto replenishment and inventory detail, and then wrap up with a few next steps. So that's our agenda for today. So let's start with, what is inventory control anyhow? What are we talking about when we talk about inventory control? I think the first point is that we have limited number of dollars that we can invest in inventory, and there's limited amount of space in our store. And so with those two limits in place, we know we still want to satisfy customers. And so really inventory control is seeking to maximize our profit and maximize our customer satisfaction by making sure we're in the right lines of merchandise. In other words, are there things that we should, could Counterpoint's reporting help us identify potentially lines that we should exit or lines that we need to enter? And so we'll talk about those things. Or do we have the right depth of assortment? So if we're going to be in business X, so if we're going to be in the business, let's say, of doing succulents, what's the number, how many different succulents do we need to have in our store? If we're a candy store, what's the amount of chocolate versus the amount of jelly beans that we need to have? So what's the depth of assortment that we need to have? And then lastly, do we have sufficient quantity on hand of all of those items that we've elected to be part of our assortment? That's what inventory control is. A question that we get a lot of times is, can't I just do this, Bart, by just walking around the store? And the answer is yes, of course you can. Don't stop doing that. We want you to walk your store. That is the beauty of being a small and medium-sized retailer, is that you have that opportunity to do that and see things that, so that the big box guys, those inventory control people could never do that. However, we want to introduce you to a little bit of science so that you're using both art and science. And let me give you a little example. When you walk the store, your eye is biased. You're going to have blind spots. If you really like a certain category of product, you're going to immediately think that assortment needs to be wide. And if we can show you some stats that say, maybe that assortment is a little too wide, that gives you an opportunity to make adjustments. All of you, I know there's several buyers on the call, And every buyer wants to have some objective measures. There's a lot of subjective components of buying. That's the art. But let's give all of our buyers some objective measures so that we're not sure that we're moving towards an overbought situation. Again, it comes back to if I'm really into a product, I could let my own biases overcloud things there. And then lastly, sometimes there are tough decisions to be made. Even if we feel it in our gut, we know that we need to make those, but those tough decisions are a lot easier if we have numbers to back up what we're feeling in our gut. So that's the science we're going to try to introduce. Now we're going to start out with a fundamental, the very, very basic of identifying stockouts. All the reports, including this stockout report that we're going to show you, are all based upon merchandise analysis report. This merchandise analysis report, you've got to know how to run. It is the most powerful report within Counterpoint. You get to it by going to inventory reports and then merch analysis. And the key to this report is to get comfortable configuring it. And Sean is going to kick us off with talking exactly about that, how to configure the report and run it so that we can identify our stockouts. So Sean, I'm going to let you take over the presentation now.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. Let me go ahead and share my screen over here. All right, so as Bart said, we're under inventory reports and we're heading to merchandise analysis report. This is certainly one you can click the star on to favorite, and then that way it's right on your home screen. Now, what we're looking for in this case is exactly what Bart said. What product are we out of stock on, but is product that we frequently sell? So we are going to customize this report to give us just that data. This merchandise analysis report can give you about 30 to 50 different reports. In this case, we're looking for what are we completely sold out on, but people still come in looking to buy regularly. This would be an item level report. We would want all items, and then I am going to sort it based on the quantity sold. Show me what I sell the most of, but I'm out of stock on. And I will base it for the past year. To the right here under the report, this is the default columns that it will display. And as I said, there are a whole variety of columns that we can show and ways that this report can display data. These are a few of the preset ones. So I like to start from a preset that makes sense to me, the inventory performance preset. That's then going to default these columns that you see down here. I don't necessarily like all of the columns, so I can certainly come and get rid of a few of these columns to put less clutter into my report. For example, we'll go to the select columns, and if I'm looking for out of stock items, weeks on hand makes no sense. I'd have no weeks on hand for something that's completely out of stock. I'm going to go ahead and just double click to remove the ones I don't care about. I'm going to move my quantity sold up a bit higher and get rid of a couple more. Maybe I do care about seeing the total sales dollars for these items. And then lastly, and this is the key, if I am trying to identify items that are out of stock, I want to go to the inventory tab, and I'm going to add a filter by right-clicking and customizing to specify that my quantity available or quantity on hand. You can use either. If you don't know the difference in these, quantity on hand is physically what is in your store. Quantity available, on the other hand, is what is available to sell from your store. It takes into account layaways and so on. So I'm going to say quantity available is at least, I'm going to say quantity available is less than 1. Now with this report criteria, I would get a report of all of my products which have less than 1 available to sell, so 0, and it is going to order by how many I've sold in the past year. Essentially telling me I sell these items, but I am now out of stock. If a customer walks in asking for one, I don't have it to sell them. That said, I've got some sample data, the report that will pull up. I'm going to turn the screen back over to you, Bart, if you would pull my sample report up.
Sure.
All right, so with the parameters that we just discussed, this is my sample report. There are several key things that we want to talk about. First and foremost, we discussed the report is an item level report. My sales are based off of the previous year, 12 months. I sorted this by the quantity sold and then filter by either on hand or quantity available being less than one. Again, that's kind of your preference and depending on your business model. Some What we're looking at is that the top 12 lines of this report have very high sales. We had significant sales of these items, but based on that, we know we're out of stock on all of these. So the 4-inch succulent, we have 0 in hand, but we sold 9,600 in the last 12 months. You may notice we have a negative quantity on hand down here. The negative quantity on hand implies that we have a physical inventory problem, and we'll talk about correcting those and be having a separate webinar on that. But that is simply we have sold below our stock, and there's something to be addressed. It's worth pointing out as well. You see a few of these where quantity on hand was positive. For example, we've got 20. And yet we're seeing that we need to reorder. The reasoning for that would be that I filtered this by quantity available. So I may have 20 on hand, but those are all committed, meaning I am now available of 0. These are all items which I couldn't sell today if I wanted to as a business owner. I need to reorder right away and get in stock so that I can sell.
Hey, Sean, I know in this particular example, you did a sales period of 1 year, but since this is a garden center type of data, a lot of times that might be a little bit less because it's seasonal products. So I think that's a worthwhile thing to mention.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks for pointing that out. As well, keep in mind that we can filter out seasonal category items. So if we don't want to see seasonals in here, we could pull those. Inversely, you may want to run this for a seasonal period and include only seasonal items to determine what you're going to need for the season coming.
Good. So the one thing we know is that customers are very sensitive to out of stock after having such a hard time getting toilet paper and paper towels. And so this is a really quick and easy way to look at your top 200 items and say, hey, am I out of stock on any of these? And let me take some emergency action to take care of that. That leads us really nicely into talking about overstock and understock situations. And when we get into this, we're really starting to get into a lot of different inventory measures, and these can be intimidating. You may have heard things like inventory turns, safety stock, and economic order quantity, the open to buy, sell through, GMROI. GMROI is one of my favorite, gross margin return on inventory, weeks on hand. All of these are about managing your inventory. And we're going to focus on just one of them today because we only had we only want to take 30 minutes of your time today. And so we're only going to be taking a look at weeks on hand. And I selected it because I think it's one of the easiest of all of those different terms to understand and to grasp. What weeks on hand simply does is it estimates how long until the current on hand, how long is the current on hand going to last? And so if we have a very high weeks on hand, that could mean that we're overstocked. And if we have a very low weeks on hand, that could mean that we're understocked. So let's take a look at this. Just a level lower. What is weeks on hand? Again, we're estimating the weeks that we're going to be in stock. So we take our current on hand and we divide that by our average weekly sales. Now, a little bit more detail, we take the current on hand at retail value. And then we get to choose our sales period. Just like with Sean a minute ago, there could be sometimes when you want to use if it's staple items, you might want to use an entire year. But if it's seasonal items, you may want to use a different period. So you could use a year, a season, a month. This month, last year, last month. All of these are different things that you could use to evaluate what your weeks on hand are going to be. And different retailers have different reasons they want to use this, and sometimes it differs from category to category. The nice thing about the weeks on hand formula too is that it can be used to calculate either for an entire category or at an individual item level. So the statistic makes sense regardless of what level it is that you're taking a look at it. Now, one of the first things that people ask me when I present this kind of thing is they come back to me and say, what should my weeks on hand target be? And that's not easy. I can't just say, hey, you need to have a weeks on hand that's under 20. It doesn't work that way. It's different. Your weeks on hand differ depending upon the attributes of the product. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk first about a staple product. In other words, something that we carry year round. It's not seasonal, it's staple. And that staple product has an average velocity of 1 per week. And let's also say that this is a product that we can get reorder into our store relatively quickly. We can get it in within 2 weeks. Well, that's a great, a product with those kind of attributes, we might expect a weeks on hand to be only about 4 weeks. If you're carrying 6 months worth of inventory on this product, you're way, way, way overstocked. Then this next example kind of peaks up just a little bit more of that. It's still a staple product. We sell it year round, but we only sell 1 per month. And we might reorder it, the reorder time when we place the order with the vendor, it might take us 4 weeks to get that product. So in this case, 10 to 15 weeks on hand would be a normal weeks, would be fairly normal. We certainly all have some product that we might only sell 2 times a year. And that product might be very difficult to acquire. It may take 6 months for it to get to us. If that were the case, then it could be reasonable for you to have 52 weeks on hand in order to be able to supply this product. Now this would be a little bit of an unusual product, and we need to make sure that our margin is high enough to cover the carrying cost. The margin on this product was the same as this staple product up here. That would be a problem, of course. And then I just wanted to give one example of a seasonal item where we might sell 1 per week, and our reorder time is 5 months. It's not uncommon for seasonal items to be orderable only once, and we got to order it well in advance and when it comes in. In other words, it will be a few months. People will already start to be ordering winter coats if you're a fashion retailer. So if we had an item like this, and the season only lasts 3 weeks, then you only want 3 to 5 weeks of supply when the season starts. Yeah, enough said. And as the season starts rolling to an end, we want to see that weeks of supply start dropping to 0. And if that weeks of supply isn't dropping quickly towards 0, we need to start marking that merchandise out so that we can sell it out. So there's a lot of variability in product. This is just 4 different examples, but hopefully it gives you some idea or some measure of how to know how many weeks on hand that you should have. Now, this is a busy slide with a lot of words. I'm not going to talk about everything on it, but what I want you to be able to do is have this slide when you go back and start experimenting with weeks on hand, because these are some settings when you're in the merchandise inventory report that are very, very important. And I'm going to just show just a few of them now, but again, use those details on that other screen. But I'll show just a couple of them. So the first thing that's important to notice is this analyze by. And when Sean did his a minute ago, he went immediately to item because he wanted to run an item level report. We, however, might want to run this at a category level. And you can see if you click on group that's the first group by that you get. Now you could also run it all the way down to a subcat level, and there's various other options for grouping by. Category and subcat, of course, are the most common. And then the other key thing that I want to point out again is this area here is where you define the sales period. And so this is where we might say, I want to see this year or last year. On the other hand, I may say, hey, I want to look at it on an annual basis, but I want to completely exclude March and April because those were COVID. And so instead of that, we're going to do February 1st, 2019 to February 1st, 2020. I could do it for a holiday season, etc. So this is a key part of this, is selecting the sales period, because we're going to use this period to determine the average sales. That's the component to coming up with calculating what's your weeks on hand. So I'm going to pop back to my presentation now. And what I want to do is show 4 different examples, or 3 or 4 different examples of the merchandise analysis report, just to show you how different it can be used. So this first one, I ran at a category level. And I ran it for a whole year. The sales period was a whole year. I did the rank, meaning I sorted it by weeks on hand, and I didn't apply any filters. And if you look across my 18 categories, there's information that I'm seeing at a category level that's telling me where do I need to dig in more deeply, and where is it that I probably don't need to dig in because it's likely that things are okay. So, for instance, in this particular demonstration database, we can see this firearm category has only 14 weeks on hand, and knowing that those take a while to come in, that it takes a while to get firearms in stock, it is likely an understocked category. Our fishing category up here at this sporting goods shop looks like it's going to, that it is likely well overstocked, because look, we've got more than a year. We all have almost 2 years worth of supply here. And really what you might be asking too, when you look at the profit on this category, is you might be asking yourself, you might need to ask yourself, should I be in this line at all? Should I be exiting fishing because I'm not generating enough profit and I'm not moving that inventory fast enough? So that's some of the analysis that you can do when you're looking at the category level. And you can also come to the conclusion of saying, I don't know for sure what this means. I think I need to drill into this a level deeper. And so let's do that. Let's drill into knife. And so now I ran this report again at an item level, not at a category level, but at an item level. I had the same period. I ranked it the same way, and I filtered by so that I'm only have the knife category on this merchandise analysis report. And what do I see? I see that my quantity on hand is around 3 or 2 or 4 on these top items, but I only sold 1 or 2 of them all year long. And so given this quantity on hand, I've got 104 weeks of supply. So I clearly says, hey, buyer, let's not purchase 3 of these anymore. We only ever need 1 because and 2 at the max. Now I want to show you a completely different view, and this is to identify what items are I understock in. Sean showed us how to find out of stock. Now we're looking for understock. And what I did here is I ran an item level report for a year. I printed my top 100 items. I ranked it by sales, not by weeks of supply, but by sales, and I didn't set any filter. And now I'm going to look through these weeks of supply and say, hey, what do I have that looks like we're running really low? And you can see there's 3 of them here where we have 1 week of supply, 1.1, 1.3. And when I look at my PO quantity, I see that there's 0 sitting in PO. And so what that is telling me is, son of a gun, we need to get some of these items on order, because we're about a week away from running out of stock on these guys. So if you do that, and you can see how quick and easy it is to look through your top 200 items, by sales, and say, am I in stock right now of my top 200? Replenishment. Sean, take it over.
Absolutely. So this is a topic that I could easily have a 30 minutes hour webinar in and of itself. I'm going to breeze over the high level, what is capable when you use Counterpoint and all these functions we're talking about. Counterpoint does have the capability to suggest reorders for you, recommend what you need, and create a purchase request for you, and go in, edit that request, so on and so forth. That is all contingent, of course, on your inventory on hand being accurate. You will need to define a minimum and maximum, which is usually where the first point I lose clients. They say, I've got 5,000 items. I cannot go define a min max. There is a Counterpoint tool that will go in and suggest and default that min max for you based on your sales. So if there is interest in this, we'll gauge that interest, and this may become a future webinar. Just know right now that there is a replenishment system in Counterpoint that can assist you in your ordering and creating those purchase requests for you.
Perfect. And one other little detail that you may not know about, which is a really, really cool screen, is called the inventory detail screen. And I'm always amazed how many people have been using Counterpoint for 10 years and they didn't know that this screen exists. So I hope someone's going to have an aha moment whenever they see this screen. So the inventory detail screen should be used regularly by anyone who's managing inventory. It allows you to pick and choose the columns that you want, and it also the order of those columns. So that's the real power behind this. You can also export this data into Excel so that you can then create filters and sorts and go crazy in Excel with doing whatever that you want to do. And this screen is found in Inventory, Views, and Inventory Detail. Let's take a quick look at it. You can see we've got the description of the item here and showing the location and the status. If you had min and max quantities, you could see those set. But all of these columns are configurable, and you can see all the different quantities, many different quantities that are available. So we can show what are committed, what we have on PO, what's on back order, what's in transfer between locations, what's on a sales order, a customer drop ship. All of these different quantities are available to you, and I suspect anyone who is a numbers person and uses Excel can say, "Oh my goodness, if I know that I can create some filters and do some things with the data that comes out of this, and really be able to focus in on the inventory that I want to focus on." And so give the inventory detail screen a try. I think you'll find that there's all kinds of fun, and of course you can do a multitude of filters to make this only show the information that you want to see. So that really, we promised to only take 30 minutes of your time today. I think we're going to cut off right on time, but Sean, take us away with next steps.
Absolutely. So we covered a lot of information today. Do feel free to go back, revisit this webinar when we get it posted online. Of course, the very first step is identifying that your on-hand inventory is accurate, those on-hand counts. If it is not accurate, we're going to be having a scheduled webinar next week about correcting your physical inventory. Be sure to tune into that. If you need help in configuring anything you saw today, the merchandise analysis reports, like I said, that is a powerful report. You can filter it 80 different ways. There is a lot of content to that. If you would like as additional assistance, email in to rapidcares@rapidpos. We can set up a dedicated one-on-one training block with you to build those reports, saving those parameters so that it's a one-click run for you. And then same is true with the auto replenishment, just reiterating, again, that very much could be a topic in and of itself. If you would like more information on that, email into Rapid Cares. Let us know that you would like to have your auto replenishment configured. We can do a one-on-one and get you set up.
Sorry about that, Preach. I didn't mean to click that out of there. Well, I think we hit right on the 30-minute goal. I appreciate everyone joining us today. I hope that you walked away with one or two nuggets that's going to help you. We certainly also want to wish you and yours all the safety during this time. And again, thank you for joining. And please join us for our subsequent webinars. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Just one more housekeeping matter. Next week, same time, we're going to be doing another webinar, and the topic will be on doing a physical count of your top items in the store. About a month from now, we have scheduled an advanced reporting session. It's going to be a full hour, and it'll dig more into setting up filters and defining parameters around reports. So some of the things you saw today, we'll cover again in about 4 weeks. Again, thank you very much for joining, and we hope we see you at the future seminars.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.